Hi, my name is Logan Jacobs, and welcome to Analyzing Sports Media and Journalism, specifically analyzing the Pat McAfee Show. Now, when looking at today's top sports media shows, we typically look at the main popular ones like ESPN or Fox Sports Network. And with the shows on these networks, you typically see the same type of format where you see two people at a table with a moderator. And essentially, for the next hour, you're going to be watching a presidential style debate where they're instead of talking about politics, they're talking about sports and happenings in the sports world, or who's going to be the greatest quarterback during the NFL that season. Now, there's some entertaining aspects to it, but I feel like there are some storytelling aspects and some natural conversation aspects that are missing from these shows. And that's where the Pat McAfee Show comes in. The Pat McAfee Show has been a topic of conversation for the last couple of years since COVID, with the complete switch of sports media and sports journalism and how we're starting to approach it nowadays. Pat is the Pat McAfee Show is mainly hosted by Pat McAfee himself, who is a former NFL punter. Alongside him is AJ Hawk, who is a former NFL linebacker. And what makes their show unique is that not only do they have the NFL experience, but alongside of them, their other co-hosts are essentially these group of guys that have been friends with them for the last couple of years and are essentially NFL diehard fans. So what makes the show unique is the fact that they can bring in the NFL experience and the NFL diehard perspective and create different narratives and different messages using natural storytelling and natural conversations to create those narratives. So, what has Pat and his show done since signing with ESPN? So, since signing with ESPN back in 2023, Pat has taken his show to a couple different college campuses throughout the college football season and essentially just running his show there with a college crowd in the background. He's been able to do this because he's a part of another show called Game Day that has a similar style where they review college games before game day on Saturday at these college events. And for this study, I essentially looked at all of these different broadcasts and decided and picked out certain moments within these streams. So the first theory that I'm going to be using is Fisher's narrative. So Fisher's narrative essentially tells us that we're natural storytellers, using natural storytelling techniques like coherence and fidelity to keep the audience engaged while telling a narrative or a story or a message for that story. And so how I'm going to use this is I essentially picked out moments in the show that personified this, where Pat used his storytelling ability to create a narrative to keep the audience engaged. Now, my one example for this is when Pat took his show to James Madison University and supported JMU for their fight against the NCAA to allow them to have a bowl game at the end of their season. Now, Pat, when he was on this rant about the NCAA, he used moments from his experience with the NCAA as a punter for West Virginia and compared his experience to other negative experiences that have happened with other players in the NCAA, essentially just signifying that the NCAA does not support the athletes the way that they want, and the crowd at JMU was absolutely supporting this the entire time because obviously their team was not being supported by the NCAA last year. Now, the other theory that I am using for this study was the auteur theory. Now, the theory is essentially it targets movies and TV shows and directors when asking the question of what is an artist or what makes a true artist in the world of cinema. And now I'm not saying that Pat's show is a movie or that Pat is a director himself. But the Pat McAfee Show does a lot of things that are essentially different from today's sports media, using a variety of different styles of interviews, different segments with his guests, and just having raw moments happen in times that aren't necessarily expected all the time. And my main examples for this was Lou Holtz, having a sit down interview with Lou Holtz at the Notre Dame live stream, where one of Pat McAfee's diehard fan companions has a really good impersonation of Lou Holtz. So Pat decided to have a one on one sit down interview with the two and just have a bizarre and hilarious 20-minute interview of them asking each other questions of the state of Notre Dame and the idea of pushing through adversity as a football team and just all these different messages and narratives and storytelling. It's just it's super cool to see that, super bizarre, and different, from typical sports shows. And my other example was Pat essentially breaking down the ability of Justin Tucker being humble on a football team. Now Justin Tucker is a kicker for the Baltimore Ravens, and with Pat's experience being a punter, so being a kicker as well, he he was able to understand Justin Tucker's ability in this situation as in this video, Justin Tucker talks about how he is the punctuation point at the end of a long paragraph that the football team did throughout the entire wrote throughout the entire game, and how his one job is important, but is not nearly as important as what the rest of the team does. Um, and with Pat breaking that down as a kicker in a football locker room, is really cool to see because you don't see that from Stephen A. Smith breaking down a certain player's ability to be humble on the football team. So, some final words of why we should study some sports media and journalism. Sports is a massive part of society in general. I feel like it brings communities, it brings families together, it brings all sorts of people together from all sorts of walks of life. And with our part of journalism, which is sports journalism, we can create narratives and create stories from those games and from those players that can help inspire others and help inspire younger athletes to continue playing the game of football or some other sport. And I think that our profession should be studied. Thank you so much.